Deep in the eastern Ozarks of Missouri, just an hour south of St. Louis, there is a place where the history of North America is carved directly into the bedrock. It's not a written record of wars or treaties, but a story told in shadows and stone, a library of symbols left by a civilization that vanished long before the first European boot touched this soil. Welcome to Washington State Park. To the casual hiker, this might look like just another beautiful stretch of the Missouri wilderness, complete with rugged trails and the winding Big River. But for archaeologists and historians, this park contains something far more precious, the largest concentration of prehistoric petroglyphs in the entire state. These aren't random doodles. They are the sacred scriptures of the Mississippian peoples, preserved in limestone for 1,000 years. To understand these carvings, you have to turn back the clock to around 1000 AD. At that time, this region wasn't a sparsely populated frontier. Just 50 miles north, the great city of Cahokia was rising, a metropolis of earthen mounds and wooden stockades that rivaled London or Paris in population at the time. The people who lived here were part of that vast Mississippian world. They were farmers, traders, and warriors who viewed the cosmos as a layered realm of spirits and monsters and heroes. And that belief system is exactly what we see carved here. When you walk the covered boardwalk at the main site, the first thing you notice is the birds, dozens of them. But these aren't just any birds, they are thunderbirds. In Mississippian mythology, the universe was a battleground between the upper world, the realm of order, the sun and the sky, and the lower world, a watery chaos filled with serpents and monsters. The thunderbird was a champion of the upper world. It was a bringer of rain, a warrior against the dark forces, and a symbol of power. The sheer number of thunderbirds at this specific site suggests that this wasn't just a living area. It was a sanctuary, a place where sky worship took center stage. Why here? Why this specific outcrop of dolomite? Archaeologists theorize that this might have been a ceremonial center for the southeastern ceremonial complex. Think of it as an ancient cathedral. When the sun hits these rocks during the solstices, the shadows lengthen and the birds seem to take flight. It's easy to imagine priests or chiefs standing right where you stand today, conducting rituals to ensure a good harvest or victory in battle. But it's not just birds. If you look closer, you'll see other shapes. The cross and circle, representing the 4 cardinal directions and the sacred fire. Arrows pointing the way, and even human footprints. There are even depictions of what looks like the Falcon Man or Bird Man, a mythological hero warrior. These symbols tell us that the people here were connected to a trade network that spanned the continent, from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. They shared a common artistic language with tribes thousands of miles away. There is, however, a second layer of history here too, one that is much closer to our own time. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the land was donated to the state. The task of building the park fell to the Civilian Conservation Corps, specifically Company 1743. This was an all-African-American unit of the CCC, and their legacy is as enduring as the carvings themselves. The men of Company 1743 didn't just build roads and shelters. They recognized the spiritual power of the place. They named their barracks Camp Thunderbird. When they built the magnificent stone dining lodge that still stands today, they honored the ancient artists by incorporating the Thunderbird symbol into the masonry of the chimney and the handmade iron hinges of the doors. It was a respectful nod from one group of craftsmen to another, separated by 9 centuries but united by the same stone. Today, the Missouri petroglyphs remain a mystery wrapped in limestone. We know who likely made them, and we know when, but we can never fully know the why. Was this a boundary marker for the Cahokian elite? A site for coming-of-age rituals, or a prayer for rain carved during a mega-drought? When you visit Washington State Park, You are asked to walk gently. These carvings are fragile. They have survived rain, ice, and time, but they are vulnerable to the touch of modern hands. They are a reminder that the Ozarks have always been a place of human story. So the next time you drive down Highway 21, stop and take the walk up to the glade. Stand among the thunderbirds and listen. You might just hear the echoes of a lost world whispering from the stone. They say the Ozarks are old, older than the Rockies, older than the Appalachians. And in a landscape this ancient, secrets have a way of getting buried deep. For 200 years, treasure hunters have combed these limestone hills, looking for Spanish gold or Civil War caches. But the most enduring mystery of them all isn't about gold, it's about silver. A lost mine, a pioneer family, and a phantom coin that supposedly bought the Ozarks, until the government said it didn't exist. This is the legend of the Yochum silver. The story begins in the early 1820s, long before the dams turned the White River into the massive lakes we see today. A settler named James Yochum, sometimes spelled Yoakum, arrived in these hills. He was a rugged frontiersman, one of the first white settlers to put down roots in the wild territory of what is now Stone County. Unlike many of his contemporaries who viewed the Native Americans with hostility, Yochum built a friendship with the local Delaware tribe. The Delaware had been relocated here by the federal government, and they knew the land's secrets better than anyone. According to the legend, in exchange for friendship and supplies, the tribe revealed to Yochum the location of a cave. But this wasn't just a shelter. The story goes that the walls of this cave were veined with pure, high-grade silver. The Delaware had been mining it for years, but as they were forced to move west again, they passed the secret torch to James Yochum. He didn't just hoard the ore, he became a frontier mint. Yochum supposedly melted down the silver and struck his own coins, the legendary Yochum dollars. In a cash-poor frontier where paper money was worthless and government coin was rare, these heady silver slugs became the de facto currency of the Ozarks. You could buy a horse, a plow, or a farm with Yocho silver. They were said to contain more pure silver than the official U.S. mint dollars of that time. For decades, the economy of the Ozarks ran on this private currency. But the bubble burst when settlers tried to use Yochum dollars to pay for federal land grants in Springfield. The agents took one look at the crude coins and cried counterfeit. They sent samples to Washington, and the word came back: stop minting or face prison. James Yochum, fearing the feds would seize his fortune, allegedly sealed the mine. Some say he used dynamite. Others say a natural landslide did the work for him. When he died, the location of the mine died with him. His descendants searched for generations, but the Yochum silver mine had vanished into the landscape. That's the legend, but what does science say? Geologists are the biggest skeptics of the Yochum mystery. You see, the Ozarks are rich in galena, lead ore, which can be shiny and silvery, but true silver deposits are incredibly rare here. Geologically, a mine with walls of pure silver is virtually impossible in this limestone karst. So, was Yochum a liar? Historians propose a different, darker theory. They point out that the Delaware Indians received annual payments, annuities, from the U.S. government in silver coin. Yochum ran a distillery. It's very likely that he was trading illicit whiskey to the tribe in exchange for their government silver. To hide the fact that he was taking government money from the Native Americans, which was illegal, he may have melted down the official U.S. mint coins and recast them as Yochum dollars.
The mine wasn't a hole in the ground, it was a laundering operation. The silver was real, but its source wasn't the rocks, it was the taxpayers. Today, the legacy of the legend lives on in the name of the famous theme park, Silver Dollar City, located just a stone's throw from where Yochum lived. But the physical evidence is gone. No authenticated Yochum dollar has ever been confirmed by modern numismatists, only myths and crude fakes. And as for the mine, if it ever existed, it is likely lost forever. In the 1950s, the Tabor Rock Dam was built, flooding the White River Valley. The old Yochum homestead and perhaps the sealed entrance to the cave now lies hundreds of feet beneath the surface of Tabor Rock Lake. So if you ever out on the water, drifting over the deep channels near the James River arm, look down. You're floating over one of America's great unsolved mysteries. Is there a fortune in silver ore sealed in a drowned cave below? Or just the ghosts of a frontier hustle that became a legend?
They say water has a memory. If that's true, then the Osage River is the most haunted stretch of water in the Midwest. For thousands of years, this river was the lifeblood of the Ozarks, a highway for the Osage Nation, a path for French fur trappers, and a home for pioneers. But today, much of that history lies buried, not under dirt, but under 100 feet of water. This is the story of the Osage River Relics and the enigma of the Painted Rock. It is a tale of a civilization drowned by progress and a few stone sentinels left behind to watch over the submerged world. High above the river in Osage County stands a place known as the Painted Rock. For centuries, this bluff has been a sacred vantage point. When you stand here, you are standing on a site that has been occupied for over 9,000 years. The site gets its name from a series of mysterious pictographs painted onto the limestone face around 1200 AD. These symbols were once vibrant, a message from the Mississippian people to the spirit world. Even the famous explorer Zebulon Pike noted this location in 1806, recognizing it as a place of immense power. But the paintings are just the surface. Just a short walk from the cliff edge lies a massive burial cairn, a stone tomb built between 500 and 1,500 years ago. Legend says it belongs to a great chief, placed here so his spirit could forever watch the river. But what exactly is he watching? Look down from the bluff and you'll see Bloody Island. It's not the famous dueling ground of St. Louis, but a place with a far older, greedier secret. The local legend tells of a Spaniard returning from the west with a fortune in gold. Ambushed by Native Americans, he barely escaped to this island, where he hurriedly buried his treasure before being killed. For 200 years, treasure hunters have whispered that the Spaniard's gold is still down there, guarding the bend of the river, visible only from the Painted Rock. But the river has a way of keeping what it claims. In 1929, the fate of the valley changed forever. The Union Electric Company began construction on the Bagnell Dam. It was an engineering marvel, but for the history of the Ozarks Valley, it was an apocalypse. When the floodgates closed in 1931, the water began to rise. It swallowed farms, cemeteries, and entire towns. Old Lynn Creek, once the county seat, was deliberately submerged. Before the water came, residents were forced to burn their own homes to clear the land. But not everything was destroyed. Today, divers in the Lake of the Ozarks tell stories of what lies beneath. They speak of the Osage River relics, the ghost towns of the deep. There are rumors of intact foundations, old roadbeds that lead to nowhere, and stone wells that still stand in the crushing dark.
But the greatest loss wasn't the pioneer towns, it was the ancient history. Archaeologists estimate that hundreds of Osage and Mississippian sites, villages, temple mounds, and petroglyphs were never excavated before the waters rose. They are there right now, preserved in the silt and silence, a lost Atlantis of the Midwest. Occasionally, the lake offers up a relic. After a heavy storm, hikers and fishermen find arrowheads, pottery shards of strange stone tools washing up on the shoreline, debris from a drowned world trying to surface. So, if you visit the Painted Rock, don't just look at the view, look into it. Beneath that placid surface lies the true history of the Ozarks, the gold of the Spaniard, the hearths of the pioneers, and the sacred mounds of the ancients. They are all still there, waiting in the dark.
The Ozarks are a land of secrets. Beneath these rolling hills lies a labyrinth of over 6,000 caves, a subterranean world that has swallowed up outlaws, treasures, and, if the old newspapers are to be believed, a lost race of giants. Welcome to Gasconade County, Missouri. Today, it's known for its wineries and scenic river views, but in the 19th and early 20th centuries, this region was ground zero for one of the most persistent and unsettling mysteries in American folklore, the Ozark Giants. The story started appearing in the 1800s, farmers plowing their fields or hunters chasing game into limestone caverns would stumble upon burial mounds that defied explanation. These weren't just ordinary graves. They contained skeletons that were reportedly 7, 8, or even 9 feet tall. One of the most famous accounts comes from the deep backwoods of Gasconade and neighboring Pulaski County. A group of explorers, perhaps looking for saltpeter or shelter, entered a previously unknown cave. Inside, buried under layers of ash and debris, they found the remains of a man who would have towered over the average settler. But it wasn't just the height that terrified them. It was the teeth. The reports often contained a chilling detail. The skulls possessed double rows of teeth. This anomaly, whether a misunderstanding of anatomy or something truly alien, became a hallmark of the Missouri Giant legends. These weren't just big men, they were different. To understand the fever for giants, we have to talk about Albert Koch. In 1840, just a few counties over, this German showman dug up a massive skeleton he called the Missourium. It was actually a mastodon, but Koch assembled it to look like a mythical sea dragon or a giant beast. He traveled the world, blurring the lines between paleontology and carnival sideshows. Skeptics argue that the Gasconade giants were likely just that, misidentified mastodon bones. A mastodon femur looks startlingly like a human thigh bone if you don't know what you're looking at. And in the 1800s, giant fever sold newspapers. A discovery of a giant race was guaranteed to make the front page from St. Louis to New York. But for the believers, the mastodon explanation doesn't wash. They point to the sheer volume of reports. Dozens of accounts from the Gasconade, Osage, and Big Piney rivers describe distinct human burials. Skeletons laid out with pottery, weapons, and copper ornaments. So where are they? This is where the story enters the realm of conspiracy. In the early 1900s, archaeologists like Gerard Falke excavated caves in this very region, Miller Cave specifically, and shipped wagon loads of bones and artifacts back to the Smithsonian Institution. According to the legend, the Smithsonian didn't display the giants, they hid them. The theory goes that the existence of a giant, non-Native American race in ancient Missouri contradicted the accepted history of the continent. So the bones were created up, cataloged, and buried in the archives never to be seen again. Today, the caves of Gasconade County keep their silence. Most of the burial mounds have been plowed over by generations of farmers or looted by pot hunters. The physical evidence is gone, lost to private collections or misplaced by museums. But the stories remain. Locals still whisper about long-shanked skeletons found in creek beds after a flood. They'd talk about the Osage giants, warriors of the Osage Nation who were historically known for their immense height, often reaching 7 feet tall. Were the double-toothed monsters simply a twisted exaggeration of these noble warriors? Or is there something else down there? A forgotten chapter of human history, sleeping in the limestone dark, waiting for the right flood or the right explorer to bring it back to the light. In the St. Francois Mountains of Missouri, there is a place that defies logic. Scattered across the hilltops are granite boulders of impossible size, some weighing over 600 tons, stacked end to end like a train of circus elephants. We call it Elephant Rock State Park. But to the early settlers and the fringe historians who whisper in the corners of the internet, this place looks less like a natural formation and more like a fortress. This is the legend of the stone fort of the Ozarks. While geologists see a natural wonder, others see the ruins of a lost civilization, a citadel built by a race of giants who once ruled the Mississippi Valley. The theory of the stone fort hinges on the eerie precision of these rocks. Look closely at the way they fit together. There is no mortar, yet the seams are often tight enough to block the light. Pseudo-archaeologists have long compared these formations to the Cyclopean masonry of Peru or the megaliths of Europe. They ask, could nature really stack rocks this perfectly? And then there are the cisterns. On the very tops of these granite giants, you will find perfectly circular depressions, known today as bird baths. Geologists explain these as solution pans, formed by millions of years of standing water dissolving the rock. But the legend says these were carved, artificial tanks designed to catch rainwater for the defenders of this ancient fort during a siege. Part of the confusion comes from a very real, very verified archaeological site just a few hours north, the old fort at Van Meter State Park. That is a man-made earthwork, a defensive fortification built by the Oneota people. But Elephant Rock's scale here dwarfs anything human hands could build without modern machinery. Science, however, has a heavy explanation. These rocks are granite tors. 1.5 billion years ago, this was a chamber of molten magma deep underground. As it cooled, it cracked into massive rectangular blocks. For eons, acidic groundwater seeped through those cracks, eating away the sharp corners and rounding them into the elephants we see today. Erosion eventually washed over the soil, leaving the core stones perched on the surface. But there is a history of stone cutting here too, just not by ancient giants. In the late 1800s, this park was a bustling quarry. The ruins people find today, the drill marks, the abandoned blocks, the sheer faces, are the work of Victorian-era stonemasons, not lost civilizations. The red granite from this fort paved the streets of St. Louis and built the piers of the Eads Bridge. The engine house ruins you can hike to are the ghostly remnants of that industrial past. It was here that men, not myths, wrestled these 600-ton beasts. But yet when you stand in the shadow of Dumbo, the largest of the rocks, the geological explanation can feel insufficient. The sheer presence of these stones commands a sense of awe that science can't quite capture. It feels like a place of power. Perhaps the stone fort wasn't built by giants, but for them, in our imaginations. It serves as a reminder that the earth is capable of architecture far grander than anything we can construct. Whether you see a natural masterpiece
or the ghost of a citadel, one thing is certain: the Elephant Rocks are watching.
The Ozarks are a landscape of forgotten histories. We know the stories of the Osage, the French trappers, and the pioneers. But there is another story, a persistent whisper that has haunted these hills for 300 years. It is the legend of a ghost tribe, a people with blue eyes, fair skin, and a language that sounded strangely like Welsh. This is the mystery of the Welsh Indians, or the lost tribe of Madoc. The legend doesn't begin in Missouri, but across the ocean, in the violent courts of 12th century Wales. The year was 1170 AD. According to Welsh folklore, Prince Madoc Ab Alaib Gwynedd, sickened by the bloody civil wars of his homeland, took a fleet of ships and sailed west into the unknown Atlantic. He reportedly found a fertile new land, returned to Wales to gather more followers, and then sailed away again, never to be seen in Europe. The legend says Madoc landed in Mobile Bay, Alabama. Over generations, his descendants, now a mix of Welsh and Native American blood, migrated north and west, pushed by wars with powerful tribes like the Cherokee. They moved up the Mississippi, eventually settling in the rich valleys of the Missouri Ozarks. Explorers like George Catlin and even William Clark noted that the Mandan were different. They lived in permanent fortified towns, not unlike medieval European forts. They used circular bull boats that were virtually identical to the Welsh coracle. But most shocking of all was their appearance. Catlin described the many Mandan as having hazel, gray, or blue eyes, and hair that turned silvery gray in a way he had never seen in other tribes. And then there was the language. Early frontiersmen swore they could understand the Mandan tongue. They claimed that the Mandan word for a boat, a cow, or a bridge echoed the Cymric dialect of Wales. In the 18th century, a Welsh explorer named John Evans traveled all the way to the Missouri Territory specifically to find these lost brothers. In Missouri, the legend became tethered to the land itself. Early settlers in the Ozarks and the Missouri River Valley found ancient stone fortifications, like the old fort at Van Meter State Park, that they couldn't explain. Ignoring the complex engineering capabilities of the Mississippian cultures, they attributed these ruins to the White Indians or the Welsh colony, believing them to be the last strongholds of Madoc's people before they were pushed further north. This folklore often blurred with the Appalachian legend of the Moon-Eyed people, a nocturnal, pale-skinned race said to live in caves and see better in the dark. In the Ozarks, these stories morphed into tales of a lost tribe hiding in the deep hollows, speaking a strange, singing language. So was there a Welsh Camelot in the Ozarks? Modern science has been less romantic. DNA testing of surviving Mandan descendants has shown no link to Welsh ancestry. The old forts are now confirmed to be the work of the Oneota and Mississippian peoples, indigenous builders who needed no European help to construct great civilizations. The tragedy of the Mandan is not that they were lost Welshmen, but that they were nearly extinguished. In 1837, a smallpox epidemic wiped out almost the entire tribe. If there ever was a unique genetic marker or a linguistic secret, it likely died with them in that terrible winter. Yet the legend persists. It survives because it connects two worlds. For the Welsh, it was a claim to the New World. For the American pioneers, it was a way to explain the impressive civilization they found in the wilderness without giving credit to the indigenous people who built it. The lost tribe of the Ozarks may never have existed in the way the legends say. Prince Madoc's bones likely lie in the Atlantic, not in a Missouri cave.
But when you float down the river and see the ruins of the ancient earthworks, it's hard not to wonder about the people who walked these banks and the stories we invent to understand them. St. Louis, the gateway to the West, a city known for its soaring arch and its mighty river. But what if I told you the real city isn't the one you see, but the one beneath your feet? St. Louis is built on a foundation of secrets, a geological Swiss cheese of limestone caves, forgotten tunnels, and sealed chambers that stretch for miles in the dark. This is the story of the underground tunnels beneath St. Louis. It begins millions of years ago, long before the first brick was laid. The ground here is karst topography, limestone bedrock that has been dissolved by acidic water over eons. It's estimated that over 40 natural caves lie beneath the city streets. And for the people who built St. Louis, these weren't just holes in the ground. They were opportunities. In the mid-1800s, waves of German immigrants arrived, bringing with them the secret to liquid gold, lager beer. But lager needs to be kept cold, around 55 degrees to ferment properly. In a time before electricity or refrigeration, the brewers found their answer in the cool, damp darkness below. The most famous of these is the Lemp Brewery cave system. Johann Adam Lemp and later his son William didn't just use the caves, they transformed them. They blasted out limestone walls, built brick archways to prevent collapse, and turned the underworld into a massive subterranean factory. At its peak, the Lemp Caves stretched for miles, connecting the brewery to the riverfront. But the Lemp Caves held more than just beer. As the family's wealth grew, so did their eccentricities. Deep underground, they built a private theater and even a heated swimming pool. It was a playground for the elite, hidden from the sun. Yet the Lemp dynasty was cursed, plagued by a series of suicides and tragedies. The family slowly died out, leaving their underground empire to rot. Today, some say the tunnels are haunted by the ghosts of the beer barons, wandering the dark passages they once ruled. Not far away, beneath the quiet streets of Benton Park, lies the English Cave. In the 1840s, this wasn't just a cellar, it was a sensation. It was an underground beer garden where thousands of barrels were stored, and citizens would descend a long flight of steps to drink in the cool, torch-lit cavern. For decades, its entrance was lost, buried under a community garden, until modern explorers drilled down and rediscovered the silent S-shaped chamber, still waiting for its next patron. But beer wasn't the only thing moving underground. Beneath Washington Avenue runs a massive artery of iron and stone, the St. Louis Freight Tunnel. Completed in 1874 to connect the Eads Bridge to the city, this tunnel carried steam trains right under the feet of unsuspecting shoppers. For a century, it was a smoky, choked throat of commerce. Today, it has been reborn as part of the Metrolink system, but the old soot-stained brickwork still whispers of the steam era. Perhaps the most impressive and dangerous tunnel is the River de Pere. Once a winding surface river, it was forced underground in the 1930s, channeled into two massive tubes wide enough to drive a truck through. Urban explorers call it the Drains. It's a world of its own, a concrete echo chamber that snakes beneath Forest Park and out to the Mississippi. But beware, when it rains, these tunnels fill with deadly speed, washing away anything or anyone inside. And let us not forget the first builders. St. Louis was once known as Mound City, home to dozens of ancient Mississippian earthworks. The last survivor, Sugarloaf Mound, sits directly on a bluff that is riddled with cave entrances. Archaeologists believe the native people viewed these caves as sacred portals to the underworld, a literal connection between the land of the living and the spirits below. During Prohibition, the city's underground network found a new purpose. Legends persist of gangster tunnels connecting speakeasies to the river, allowing bootleggers to move illicit booze without ever seeing a police officer. While many of these are just myths, the blocked-up doorways in the basements of old St. Louis bars tell a different story. Today, St. Louis bustles on the surface, unaware of the hollow world below. We fill in the sinkholes, we pave over the entrances, and we forget. But the caves are still there. The tunnels still breathe. And in the quiet of the night, if you put your ear to the ground, you might just hear the echo of a steam train, the clink of a beer stein, or the whisper of a ghost from the city below.